In California, we've had an initiative to go all electric when it comes to new car sales by 2035. Congress just passed a law that doesn't allow California to have its own emission rules when it comes to cars. We recently interviewed Larry Elder, who's a best-selling author and radio host. He made a documentary about electric cars. And could they be good for the planet, or do they have a downside environmentally?
We talked to a lot of people on the street, and most people on the street felt the way I felt, which is that all in, EVs had to be better for the planet than gas-powered cars. I think most people don't know about the fossil fuel generated energy it takes to make it, to transport it, the stuff that goes into the battery, the humanitarian issues I just now mentioned about kids using their hands to dig this stuff out. I think most people are completely unaware of all these kinds of things. So do I think people are going to gravitate towards EVs? I think yes, because they're ill-informed about what really goes on to the whole process of an EV.
I was very surprised by what I learned watching this documentary and having this interview. Here's the trailer for this documentary.
Do you think EVs are better for the planet than gas-powered cars?
I think so.
Yes.
Probably not.
Yes.
No.
Yes, I think so. I don't think so.
I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, electric is probably the best way to go.
When I first began hearing this business about net zero emission, I felt conflicted.
We will eliminate in the state of California the sales of internal combustion engines.
And most countries in the world have already signed up for it. I love my gasoline-powered cars. I don't want the planet to be damaged, so I just don't know what to believe. Is it really true that electric vehicles are better for the planet than gasoline-powered vehicles?
So without more mechanical parts moving in the vehicle, it's instantaneous. Torque is instantaneous.
The batteries are lasting very long.
Charging them at your house using solar is amazing.
That's it? Wow. I needed to get my hands on one of those cars. What is your opinion of electric vehicles?
Oh boy, sorry ass. I'm not real fond of electric vehicles. They're good for around town. If you long distance, they create anxiety. Had one fire, sitting in the parking lot just burst into flames. And then you're having a problem with the battery. What do you do with these batteries when they go bad?
When I think about visiting Ogbog Bloshi, it brought me to tears.
This metal to the lithium-ion batteries demand skyrocketed in the past decade.
It's hard to get one mine permitted in the United States, which means we're going to be relying on those people who control those minerals, and that's China.
And I'm not willing to financially support that humanity atrocity.
An electric vehicle is a computer with 4 wheels and some seats.
The components of these electric vehicles are made in China, so there could be tracking mechanisms put into Americans' cars.
And I believe that the United States needs to stand up against that.
And my father always told my brothers and me the following: hard work wins. You cannot control the outcome, but you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you moan and groan, ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? My one question, my big overriding question would be real simple. Are EVs better for the planet than gasoline-powered vehicles?
Larry, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, CMAC. I appreciate it.
You know, in California, we have had this ambition to go all electric. By 2035, all the cars sold are going to be electric, right. Zero emission. You made a documentary that's actually challenging the narrative that these are good for the planet. Can you tell us what is this documentary about?
Well, I was approached by Impactful Pictures to explore this. I knew nothing at all about EVs at the very beginning. I'd never even driven one before. I just kind of assumed that they were better for the planet than gas-powered cars because everybody seemed to think that and suggest that. The film, by the way, is not about climate change. However you feel about climate change, I have my own views. If you're on the extreme side, as is Joe Biden, who says climate change is an existential threat to the planet, or you're on the other side that says it's much ado about nothing, or somewhere in the middle, it really isn't about that. However you feel about that issue, the documentary explores whether or not a EV is better for the planet than a gas-powered car. And again, as I said at the beginning, I assumed that they were. The documentary starts out, CMAC, by going to a auto show here in LA, one of the biggest auto shows in the world. And I learned about the technology. The technology is stunning. It is amazing what they've done with these EVs. As one of my pundits in the documentary said, it's a computer with 4 wheels, seats, and a steering wheel. And it is just amazing, particularly the self-driving technology. About 40,000 Americans lose their lives on the road every year in America. And almost all of it is because of driver error. This would almost completely eliminate that. One expert suggested that if everybody had self-driving cars, the percentage of deaths could fall almost 90%. Because humans are humans. They're tired, they're angry, there's road rage, they've been drinking, they're doing drugs, who knows what's going on. Distracted by music, by books on tape, by individuals in the car. Computer's not distracted. So that's one huge benefit. And they're fast and they're quiet. And the technology changing all the time, so just as your computer can be updated, the car can be updated. The downside of that is that, like a computer, it can be hacked and can be controlled. And the people that sell the car can presumably get information from you, about you, could even possibly take control of the car. So that's also one of the downsides. The other thing I learned is that it takes fossil fuel generated energy to make an EV. You can't make one with solar powered energy. It takes an EV produced by fossil fuel to exist, and then to transport it, to get it to the dealership, and then, of course, to charge it. Most electricity is generated by fossil fuel energy, not by wind and solar. So when you look at all the things that go into making an EV and transporting an EV, the carbon footprint probably isn't any smaller than a gas-powered car really is. Over time, it probably is cheaper to operate. It's more expensive to buy up front. It depreciates probably a little bit more right now, although that's changing. The insurance and the maintenance, it might be a little more expensive, although that is changing. So overall, operating the EV over the long haul probably might be a little less expensive. One wonders, CMAC, whether there would be a market for it if it weren't for tax credits and other incentives that state and local governments give people to buy them and to manufacture them. But then there's the other part, the ugly part, is the stuff that goes into the battery. It's called lithium or cobalt or nickel. They're called minerals. Some people call them rare earth minerals. And they have to be mined. And they're either mined in places that China controls or in China itself. Particularly something called nickel. Nickel is mined in places like the Republic of the Congo by children who are pressed into labor by slave labor. They make $1 or $2 a day. And kids, literally, when I say kids, I mean 8, 10, 12-year-old boys and girls are using their bare hands to get this stuff out of the ground. It's toxic. Over the long haul, it probably causes cancer. And I think most people who purchase EVs have no idea that the stuff that goes into the battery comes from places like that. Also, the computer chips that go into the battery come from China, which makes China wealthier. China is our #1 adversary. It makes us even more dependent upon China for the chips and for the minerals that go into the battery. So you need to ask yourself from a foreign policy standpoint and a national security standpoint, do we really want to enrich China more by buying more EVs? So there are all sorts of other considerations to look at. And mandating the purchase of a EV by the year 2035, which is what Gavin Newsom said he wanted to do. By the way, he's pulled back from that a little bit. Other states have embraced it. He's pulled back because he wants to run for president in 2028. And he knows that the majority of Americans don't like the idea of being force-fed an EV. So he's backed up a little bit. But up front, they cost more than gas-powered cars that are the same size. So you're telling poorer people that they must spend more to purchase a vehicle that they may or may not even want. So look at everything, go all told, is an EV better for the planet? The good, the bad, and the ugly I look at. And by the end of it, my conclusion is, just from a humanitarian standpoint, and just from the idea that it makes us even more dependent upon China, I wonder whether or not people that own them or thinking about buying them are looking at everything.
When you were doing this documentary, you said in the beginning you thought that they are better for the planet. What was the pivotal point that you realized this is worse?
Well, when I talked to people that were in the auto industry and people that are in the mining industry and they were telling me all the stuff that goes into an EV and how it really is manufactured and transported, then it occurred to me that while the carbon footprint may not be visible here, it's somewhere else. It's still there. It still takes fossil fuel generated energy to make it. So we may not see it, but it's still there. And then you have to maintain it. The other thing too is the batteries have a shorter shelf life than the battery that goes into a gas-powered car. And all this material that's in it is toxic. If you bury it under the ground, it leaks, and it could threaten the underground water storage. There was a front page article in the LA Times, of all places, about 2 or 3 years ago that talked about what they're doing with solar panels, because they also have a shelf life. And you put them in the ground, they leak. Well, the batteries are just as toxic, if not more so, and they leak. We've had fires out here in California recently, and people that own EVs have seen their batteries explode because of the fires. So these are the kinds of things I think a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to. What do you do when the battery is spent? And the battery is spent faster than the battery that goes into a gas-powered car.
We're going to start manufacturing millions of tons of batteries, tens of millions of tons of batteries. And at the end of a decade or so, they really will be garbage, because either better ones will be around or those ones will be worn out. What do you do? If I were a betting man, and I'm not, I guess, I would bet most of them will go to landfill.
The reason I guess I assumed that putting them in the land was not good, because I remember reading an article,
chemicals will leak out.
Front page of the LA Times, about solar panels, chemicals leaking out, toxic materials, threatening the underground water supply.
So solar panels, the glass, the cover solar panels is considered toxic waste because it contains metals to stabilize the glass from its exposure to UV light. The windmill's blades are non-recyclable plastic. So one small wind farm has more non-recyclable plastic in it than all the world's plastic straws combined. A big wind farm has more plastic you can't recycle than all the world's plastic bottles combined. But nobody cares about that. So they'll go to landfill. Landfill done properly, you don't get any leakage, it doesn't harm anybody, it can last for thousands of years and not cause any environmental harm, and it's cheap. The problem is, like everything else in society, you have to wonder who's doing the landfilling. And since we don't want to do that, what we did infamously with a lot of our landfills, we ship our trash to other countries to recycle / or landfill. And so what I would hope we'll have on that part of the debate is the same thing I hope on every part of this change the world energy debate: transparency. Let's just be honest about what's really going on and who's doing it and at what cost.
So when we think about our technologies that we use today, one of the challenges, and this is a public health challenge, is that many of the metals in our technologies we don't recycle. And there are areas now where local people in those countries do what we can think of as artisanally mine the metals from those technologies. And from a public health perspective, that is really bad.
And at some point, you got in one. And
Right.
what was the experience like for you?
Well, again, I'd never been in one before, seen them, and I drove one, and taking your hand off the wheel and having the car just take over and make lane changes and turn and somehow know when to stop at a red light and know when it's green. It's amazing. It's kind of unsettling because I didn't trust it, but it made smoother lane changes than I think I probably would have made them more cautiously than I probably would have made. So I'm just really impressed by the technology. I have a friend who recently bought one, and she said it took her 3 or 4 days to get used to it, but she now uses it to go to and from work with self-driving technologies. You have to sit there. The law is you have to still sit there. You can't literally read a book. You have to have your hands a certain way. But I think over time, it will get to the point where you can literally get in the car, take a nap, get on your computer, do something else, which will increase productivity and therefore economic activity substantially. If you can think about all the time we spent driving, what a waste of time that is. And if you could do something else productive while you're doing that, that's what the promise of this technology really is.
Feel free to take a ride.
So no key.
No key. You just all you need is the phone.
All you need is a phone.
Yeah. You walk closely and it detects.
Wow.
And then you just shift down, and that's drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
My God, they go so fast. So I was able to drive it, and I gotta tell you, it was weird. The self-driving part is weird. Okay, how do I do the self-driving?
You press down twice. Yeah, okay, now you. Okay, here we go.
Wow. We went on the freeway, and you take your hands off, and literally it's driving itself. Once I step on the brake, is the self-driving off?
Cancelled, yeah.
I see.
Go straight.
Straight.
And then make a right at that.
Okay.
We're gonna enter the freeway.
Again, okay. This technology is amazing. It is absolutely amazing how fast you can go, how quiet it is, how the whole panel has everything there, how it keeps you from being too close to another car when you're self-driving. It slows down by itself. It takes a while to trust it. And I'm a very cautious driver. I think I've had one accident in my life. I never get any tickets. So surrendering and letting the car take over by itself is hard for somebody who's kind of in control to do.
Now, you mentioned the minerals. There's some rare earth metals involved in them, and then the cobalt.
Right.
What if these were coming in the U.S.? Because there's a big lithium find here.
There is, and one is unsure how much of this stuff there is in the planet. But we in America do have the means to find things like lithium. I talked to a miner who was very upset that we got this stuff in the ground. Because of environmental rules and regulations and permitting process, it's just still sitting there. So if we are forced to buy EVs, it seems to me we ought to be able to mine some of the stuff here in the States, given the fact that it's there, but it's not being mined for environmental reasons. Also, labor costs, obviously. It's cheaper if you're using slave labor than people being paid. So all these things are why so much of it is being done in third world countries. But if we are compelled to buy an EV, it seems to me that we ought to then be able to shift manufacturing and mining here to the country, because there is the existence of a lot of this stuff here.
What about the cobalt? Is that something you looked into? Is there a way to get the cobalt?
It is. I don't know how much of it we have here, but there's a book called Cobalt Red, which talks about the exploitation of kids all over the world and how toxic this stuff is. But right now, it is necessary for the battery. Since we've done the documentary, I've gotten a lot of letters from people telling me the technology is changing and the batteries are changing, and batteries are coming online that require less and less cobalt. So maybe over time, this issue will be resolved. I think a lot of these issues will be resolved over time, but not right now. Charging stations is a problem too. There's driving anxiety. California has maybe 1.2 million EVs. We have more than any other state. But there still aren't enough charging stations so that you can feel comfortable going from point A to point B over a long distance of time and feel comfortable there's going to be a charging station. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. I read a couple times people have tried to go coast to coast in an EV, and they haven't had a good time because Texas, Florida, California have the most charging stations. But once you get away from those states and you're in the middle of the country, you're in trouble if you're trying to get all the way across.
Now, the 2035, the emissions goal mandate that we have in California, how realistic is that?
It's not. And I'm not sure why 2035 is opposed to 2034 or 2040, but that's Gavin Newsom. They believe that by the year X, all sorts of bad things are going to happen. Notice how these predictions keep getting moved down the road because they don't happen. Recently, the Antarctic ice sheet doubled in size over the past year. That wasn't supposed to happen. If you watch the movie An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore is talking about how the polar ice caps are going to be gone. They should have been gone 10 years ago, but they're not gone. So I'm not convinced all these things are going to happen, and I certainly don't believe that people should be force-fed a renewables method of getting energy just because of your alarmist concerns about climate change. This is not part of the documentary, but there is a man, he just died a few years ago, named Freeman Dyson. Freeman Dyson is a physicist, one of the smartest persons in the world. He was involved in nuclear physics, and for whatever reason, he got interested in the issue of climate change while he was in his 80s. He died a couple of years ago. He's about 95 years old when he died. Again, universally acknowledged as one of the smartest persons in the world, and done cutting edge physics. So he saw the documentary, read everything he could on climate change, and he felt that Al Gore was a Pied Piper of bad science, and that An Inconvenient Truth was entertaining propaganda. By the way, this guy is a Democrat, voted twice for Barack Obama, which is why the New York Times did a long feature of him and his skepticism about climate change alarmism, and the headline was called The Civil Heretic. Heretic meaning somebody who dissents from the main point of view, popular point of view, and you couldn't get mad at him because he was calm, courtly, reasonable, not a flamethrower, and he's a Democrat. And so the whole climate change world had to pay attention to this guy because he's so bright and so persuasive and so well regarded. He thinks the whole thing is a bunch of nonsense, that the planet is always changing, and that rather than get panicked over it, we should adapt to whatever consequences occur because of the change in the planet. And he's not even sure to what degree human activity is causing all of this stuff. So that caused a lot of kerfuffle, put it that way, in the climate change community because of this man's well thought through, disciplined, reasonable dissent.
And in this process of going through making this movie, did you get tempted to get an electric car?
No, I didn't. I'm born and raised in America. We're a car culture. I've always been fascinated by gas-powered cars. I didn't say this in the documentary, but my favorite car growing up was a 1957 T-Bird, the one with the little round thing in the back of it, like it's like a little portal. I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful car. And I got to the point where I was able to buy one. Leon Kaplan, one of the persons I interviewed in the film, The Motor Man, I asked his expertise to find a car for me, and he found one. A beautiful lime green 1957 T-Bird. So where I live, I have a two-car garage. Nina has a car, I have a car. So there's really nowhere to put it, so I had to store it somewhere else at the auto museum, Peterson Auto Museum. I stored it there, bought rent to store it there. So when I got the car, first Sunday, Nina and I drove it. Next Sunday, Nina and I drove it. Third Sunday, we didn't feel like driving it. Fourth Sunday, didn't really feel like driving it. Fifth Sunday, got into the car, it wouldn't start. Had to get it charged. Supposed to charge it at least once a week. We weren't doing it. So a couple of months later, we decided to drive it again, wouldn't start. 6 months later, it wouldn't start. And I realized that I really didn't want it. It was too much trouble. My goal was to be able to buy one. I checked it off the bucket list, and I sold the car. What a pain. She said, this is kind of a pain. I said, yeah, it's real pain. Let's get rid of it. We did.
So do you think this move to the electric, is it going to change culturally? Do you think there will be a change?
Well, I do. I think it's, again, taking the decision away from people. And I'm big on choice. And I don't think government should be dictating to people what they should buy. And I don't think they should be dictating to people what kind of energy they should use. I think the market should determine that. And I don't like the idea that, in my opinion, but for the incentives to buy it and to manufacture it, I'm not quite sure how big and robust the market would be.
You interviewed a lot of different people in this process, and you have been interviewing many people with your shows. Was there any one of them that kind of stood out in this documentary?
I think Leon Kaplan. Leon Kaplan is called the Motor Man. For people not in LA, he's had a show about motors, not just automotors, but planes and boats, anything fast. He likes to go fast. He's from the South. He's got a very relaxed kind of Andy of Mayberry kind of approach and very likable. He's had a radio show in LA for almost 40 years. And I asked Leon if he'd be part of the documentary. He goes, I'm not sure you want to hear what I have to say. And he's just not a fan at all. He doesn't like the battery. He doesn't like the short shelf life of the battery. He doesn't like. He likes things to be heavy and powerful, and he feels the car is too light. He's just not a fan at all. You've raced cars, motorcycles, planes, boats.
I've had 5 broken arms racing motorcycles, and I was lucky. Larry, I'm crazy.
What is your opinion of electric vehicles?
Oh boy, sorry ass. I'm not real fond of electric vehicles. I bought one and didn't want one. You know, being in the media, I could get a new car. I get a new car almost every week to test drive.
Leon had declined the lure of paid reviews for electric vehicles. He chose to use his own money to buy one. That way he could share his unbiased thoughts on the matter, leading our story to take an unexpected turn.
I lost a lot of money. I kept it 3 weeks. Took it back to the dealer, says, take this car. If you're just commuting around town, they're good for around town. If you're long distance, they create anxiety. Just last Thanksgiving alone, here in California, between here and San Francisco is a place called Harris Ranch. And there was 1.5 miles of electric cars backed up, waiting and driving back from San Francisco. They couldn't make it to LA. And it takes the average on a fast charger 30 minutes to an hour to charge it up. I mean, batteries have a lot of negative stuff to it. You can't store it for long if it lets it sit. Hard to work on, and they're expensive. Replace a battery in a car, $10,000, $20,000. And plus, another thing, I keep thinking about it, is batteries don't like to be charged fast. You burn them up. If they fast charge it over and over and over again, they'll tell you they overheat real bad.
In terms of the general public, do you think people are going to back away from this trend?
It's hard to say because in the trailer, a lot of people on the street, and most people on the street felt the way I felt, which is that however you feel about climate change, an EV is better for the planet than a gas-powered car. And I think a lot of the reporters are left-wing, and they are wedded to this climate change narrative and wedded to the idea that EVs will be a solution to climate change. So I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to get good information. It's amazing how ill-informed people are about so many different things. I just did the other day a show on taxes. As we speak, as you know, the Republicans are putting together their budget bill. And for a while there was some suggestion that wealthy people were going to have their taxes raised. I think even Trump mused about it. He backed away from it, but even he mused about it. A few years ago, Investors Business Daily did a poll to find out how many people knew the percentage of the federal taxes paid by the top 1%. The top 1% pay over 42% of all federal income taxes. The top 1% make about $400,000 or more. They pay 42% or so of the federal income taxes while taking in around 20% of the nation's income.
So 42%, top 1%.
Top 1% pays 42% of all federal income taxes while taking in around 20% of the nation's income. By that measure, they are overtaxed. So Investors Business Daily commissioned a poll to find out how many people were aware that the top 1% paid over 40% of all the federal income taxes. And I'm doing these numbers just generally. About 10 to 20% thought the top 1% paid 1%, maybe 2% of all taxes. Another 20% thought they paid maybe 10%. Another 20% or so thought they paid between 20 and 30%. Bottom line, only around 12% of Americans really knew the top 1% paid 40% or more, which might explain why so many people, particularly on the left, want the so-called rich to pay even more. They're unaware how much they're paying at all. Same thing with police shootings of unarmed black men. I know that sounds like a different topic, but the point I'm making is about the wholesale ignorance about so many different things. When George Floyd died at the hands of that police officer, we had 4 months worth of protests. 25 people were killed. 2,000 police officers were injured. There was about $2 billion of insured property damage, another $1 billion or $2 billion of uninsured property damage. 4 months of protests, and probably about 400 cities all over America, because of an assumption that what happened to George Floyd had to do with his race, even though the lead prosecutor, which is on television, never even implied that what the officer did had to do with George Floyd's race. And the officer wasn't charged with a hate crime. Yet you had all this explosion. So there was a website called policemag.com, CMAG, that asked people who are self-described as very liberal How many unarmed black men did the police kill in 2019? 50% of the self-described very liberal people thought the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019. 8% thought they killed 10,000. How many did the self-described regular liberals think, you ask? 39% of self-described liberal people thought the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019. 5% thought they killed 10,000. The actual number, according to the Washington Post database, was 11.
Wow.
So that's the gap between what people think is going on in the streets versus what is going on. Same thing with EVs. I think most people, as I said before, I'm a reasonably informed individual, and I just assumed that all in, EVs had to be better for the planet than gas-powered cars. I think most people don't know about the fossil fuel generated energy it takes to make it, to transport it, the stuff that goes into the battery, the humanitarian issues I just now mentioned about kids using their hands to dig this stuff out. I think most people are completely unaware of all these kinds of things. So the answer to your question is, do I think people are going to gravitate towards EVs? I think yes, because they're ill-informed about what really goes on to the whole process of an EV.
How much effort it took for you to figure this out?
Well, I spent a whole year, again, starting from knowing nothing to, by the end of it being, I think, reasonably knowledgeable about everything that goes into it. It took a whole year. We traveled all around the world to talk to miners, talk to manufacturers, talk to technicians, talk to scientists, talk to climate change scientists. And I think I interviewed altogether about 50 people. So it's a pretty, I think, balanced documentary. It doesn't shove anything down your throat. It doesn't tell you that EVs are bad. I think the title pretty much says it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to buy one, keep one, sell one, or trade it away.
And Larry, you're the one that can actually find the facts and know which ones to trust, which ones not to trust. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, everybody has biases. I'm no different than anybody else, but I like to think I've got a reputation for somebody who tries to think things through and tries to get information before I make a decision. And I'm not afraid to give a point of view that is not consistent with a conservative point of view or a conventional point of view. For example, right now, one of the issues that we are talking about, we meaning Americans, particularly conservatives, is this meme that James Comey, the former head of the FBI, posted. He claims he was walking down a beach. Let's assume he's telling the truth. He didn't arrange the shells himself or get somebody to arrange it. And the shells spelled out 8647. And by some people, it means take out President Donald Trump. He has been interviewed by the FBI, and some people want him charged with attempting to encourage the assassination of President Donald Trump. We have a First Amendment, and our First Amendment is very broad, and it allows you to say some of the most vulgar, insensitive, hateful things. And so I don't think what James Comey did rises to the level of criminal behavior whatsoever, although I think a lot of people on our side feel that way. Just as I feel that on January 6th, when Donald Trump gave that speech and said, I want you to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard, that was protected by the First Amendment. Yet the man was accused of engaging in an insurrection, and he was impeached for the second time. So I try to be consistent and fair, and if I'm going to basically say what Comey did was defensible, if not offensive, then what Donald Trump did on January 6th should be protected also by the First Amendment. My long way of saying, even if I tick off a few people on my side, I try to see things fairly, honestly, as I see them.
And how did you learn to do that?
I just try to think for myself. My father was a Republican. And when I grew up, CMAC, in South Central LA, nobody was a Republican. During the primaries, you have a booth, because the ballots are different. There's a booth for Democrats and a booth for Republicans. But in our neighborhood, nobody was a Republican. So there was, at the polling precinct, about 20 booths for Democrats and 1 for Republicans. And my dad was the only one I ever saw walk in it. So everybody knew he was a Republican. And I asked my dad about that once. Did it bother him? And my father said, absolutely not. He said, I try to think for myself, and I want you to think for yourself. And you make your own decision and let the chips fall where they may. And if certain people are not happy with it, that's their problem, not yours. So that's how I grew up. My mother and my father were both like that.
And so the community would challenge you why your father is voting Republican, or were they?
Well, my point is, it wasn't popular to be a Republican in my neighborhood, and my dad didn't give a damn. My dad's idea was that I'm going to vote for the person I think is best for the country. And if other people don't see it that way, that's their problem, not mine. So my dad was not persuaded by whether or not his view was popular or unpopular, and I try to do the same thing. I try to see it as I see it, and if certain people don't like it, that's their problem, not mine.
So this documentary is actually like a Hollywood movie. The way you're going on a journey, you're taking people in this journey with you.
Yeah, for people who have not seen it, it's a very entertaining film. It sounds like almost a dry topic. You know, EVs, are they good, are they bad? A bunch of talking heads, but the production value is amazing. The special effects are amazing. The people I interviewed, they're all interesting, talented, accomplished people in their field, who had interesting things to say. Excuse me. So I think just on a entertainment level, it's a very interesting documentary. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it after I watched it. I've done several other documentaries, and this is one that I think, even if you don't care about the topic coming in, you will be entertained by the documentary.
And you'll learn a lot of things about the global trade, what's happening with these.
The reviews have been quite good. Someone from Newsweek reviewed it. Other people have written reviews about it, and so far no one has said it's boring, no one said it's dull, no one said I didn't learn anything. One guy wrote and said that I thought I knew a lot about EVs, but I had no idea about the components that go into the batteries and the humanitarian aspects of all of that. So I'm really pleased with the reaction. If you go on IMDb, you can find several reviews, and the reviews have been quite good. I'm a big design guy, and I never really thought EVs were attractive. But the auto show had a bunch of EVs that are going to be coming out in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years that are really quite beautiful. The designs are getting very, very interesting. So I think that over time, many of the things I complain about the amount of fossil fuel it takes to manufacture the EV, they will be tackled. I think things I'm talking about, the stuff that goes into the battery, that's going to be addressed. And so maybe down the road, some of the issues I raise in the documentary might be solved. The technology is changing that rapidly.
And ideally, it needs to happen here in the U.S. for it to be more humanitarian.
Of course. You know, we've got all sorts of labor laws, child labor protection laws, safety measures that other countries don't have. You're producing things faster, cheaper, cleaner than anybody else.
And do you see California one day contributing to that?
You know, California has so many smart people. We have so many great universities and colleges. There's no reason why California can't be the cutting edge of this kind of technology. We need to get some of these people out of the way and some of the regulations out of the way and stop jamming things down people's throats. We're overtaxed in California, overregulated in California. The average price of a home in California is twice that of the national average. So a lot of bright people can't afford to live here. They move elsewhere. Our schools, public schools anyway, are ranked near the bottom. We need to have school choice in California. There's lots of things that need to be done to restore California to its former greatness. We need to do more about our infrastructure. California has the same water infrastructure as it had 20 or 30 years ago when the state was half the same size. We need to do better forest management. These fires don't need to be this severe. Donald Trump has talked about some of the things that need to be done here in California. And unfortunately, because of the environmentalists, they're not being done.
This is a fascinating documentary. I've watched it and it's amazing. It's a journey. You take people on a journey. It kind of feels like going with you on a journey.
No chasing, no sex, but it's still an interesting documentary.
Larry Elder, the news commentator, radio host, and producer. It was great to have you on California Insider. Let us know what you think of the electric cars. Do you think they're better for the planet than gas-powered cars? Or these invisible parts that we don't see have a big impact on the planet? Let us know what you think. You can always email us at siamak@californiainsider.com or comment. We read all of your emails and comments. This is Siam Ekrami with California Insider, and we'll see you next time.